Senior ANC leaders have delivered strong messages at the uMkhonto wesizwe Liberation War Veterans Conference in Bloemfontein. They've called for honest renewal of the ANC. Party Secretary General Fikile Mbalula has told delegates that the ANC will fight for its heritage up to the highest court in the land. Former ANC President Thabo Mbeki warned against what he called counter-revolutionaries who are trying to destroy the ANC. He called on delegates to support the national dialogue. Well, for more now, let's talk to SABC Politics reporter Samkele Maseko. Good evening, Samkele. Before we start on that, I believe there's some breaking news.
Indeed, there is some breaking news. A South African politician, an MMC in one of the municipalities in the Gauteng province, was caught in the floods. He or she, with the people they were traveling with, were caught in those particular floods. Their vehicle was swept away. South African National Defence Force and the Mozambican Defence Force are currently on the prowl looking for that particular MMC and the individuals they were traveling with in going towards Mozambique. That vehicle was swept away. They are looking for he or she at this point in time. It is not yet clear whether that particular MMC is still alive, whether they have been able to get out of the wreckage of their vehicle that has been swept away in those heavy floods sweeping across Mpumalanga, sweeping across Limpopo, and sweeping across the country of Mozambique at this point in time. We also do know that the family has gone over to Mozambique to work with Mozambican officials to try and locate this particular MMC in one of the municipalities in the Gauteng province. They have been swept away. There were reportedly about 4 individuals traveling within that particular vehicle. They are yet to be found in those heavy rains that are sweeping across Mozambique. Mpumalanga floods, you know it's flooded in the likes of the Kruger National Park and other parts of Mpumalanga leading on to Mozambique.
Gosh, that's a very, very sad and troubling story. Well, thoughts and prayers go out to them that were swept away, and we hope for a good outcome, and also thoughts and prayers to their families. Well, let's continue with some other info now. I want to know, with this ANC SG Fikile Mbalula's address, what do you make of his speech at the MKLWV conference?
ANC leaders are out and about addressing these particular rallies, particularly if you look at the uMkhonto wesizwe Liberation War veterans, the legacy that they've played within the struggle of the country, and how they've fought for the liberation, and where the ANC is at this point in time. Fikile Mbalula saying that it is scandalous that former soldiers of uMkhonto wesizwe, Azapo, APLA, and many other military wings are finding themselves destitute, and it is scandalous that government has not been able to make sure that these particular individuals who fought for the liberation of South Africa have proper shelter, have proper income, have proper food. And this is one of the issues that needs to be thoroughly addressed, and that government cannot speak as if they are not, the ANC cannot speak as if it's not in power. It is in power. It must address the plight of the former Liberation War veterans who come from APLA, Poko, and other liberation armies such as uMkhonto wesizwe. Former President Mbeki even went extensively to speak about counter-revolution that was there between the black-on-black violence of the ANC and the IFP, going on to how uMkhonto wesizwe Liberation War veterans must be at the forefront of defending the African National Congress. So they all have come to a reality that they can't leave those who fought for this democracy that we enjoy to be continuing to be destitute, poverty-ridden, faced with unemployment, inequality, and underdevelopment.
Samkele, former ANC President Thabo Mbeki was also an MK operative in exile, spoken about the counter-revolutionaries. Please tell us what he meant by that, and a bit more information, perhaps background too.
Former President Mbeki has been very vociferous on this issue of counter-revolution in the country. He speaks about counter-revolution having been planning the demise of the African National Congress, saying that they've predicted that the ANC in the next 5 years will cease to exist, pretty much like that of the organization of UNIP of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, former president of Mozambique. That would be UNIP in rather not Mozambique, Zambia, that UNIP has ceased to exist. The ANC would fall into that particular category of former liberation movements that will seemingly dwindle in electoral power and end up like that of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda's party in Zambia, UNIP, and saying that these liberation members of the ANC of uMkhonto wesizwe must stand up and defend the ANC, the likes of Generals Piwe Nyanda, the likes of Gregory Ntatisi, the likes of Nkasha Bangu, who comes from the likes of Mpumalanga, and many others who are still within the ranks of uMkhonto wesizwe, and the likes of Dan Harto, who's just been re-elected as the president of uMkhonto wesizwe Liberation War Veterans, to stand up, defend the African National Congress, and defeat those whom are in the dark shadows, whom are those particular agents whom are working with the counter-revolution in order to defeat the African National Congress and defeat the liberation and democratic trajectory that South Africa is on, that is spearheaded by the African National Congress. He speaks about how it was that particular dark force that played itself out on the arrest of former President Jacob Zuma in the burning of the provinces of KwaZulu-Natal, attempts to burn the likes of Gauteng and Mpumalanga as well, and saying that that counter-revolution was also instrumental in the demise of the support of the African National Congress to below 50% and the surge of support to the likes of uMkhonto wesizwe, saying that if you look at Gauteng as an example, you've had the hostels, your Dube hostel, and the number of hostels within the likes of Ekurhuleni, Johannesburg, Tshwane, that were predominantly IFP strongholds. But in the last election, general election in 2024, they switched to the MK party, saying that this particular dark force that controlled those hostels that gave support to the IFP, they went on to have the switch that support to the MK party, and they still control that particular support and going to infiltrate the likes of the province of KwaZulu-Natal, saying that the counter-revolution within the country is still at large and is still working. And with the July unrest that was likened to people being unhappy on the arrest of former President Zuma, saying that it was counter-revolution that planned that particular unrest to show how naked the state is and unable to defend the democratic dispensation of South Africa, saying the SNDF was inept, the South African Police Service was inept, the national intelligence agencies within the country, SSA, NIU, all of them are inept with dealing with an upsurgence or counter-revolution planning to overthrow the government, saying that they would ultimately be unable to defend democratic South Africa because the state does not have the capacity in order to deal with unrest that are sporadic across the country and that would ultimately lead to a coup d'etat.
You also monitored President Cyril Ramaphosa's address during the meeting of the National Dialogue Steering. Is government confident that the dialogue will be successful?
Government is very confident that dialogue will be successful. They have some teething problems in rolling out the national dialogues across all 4,500 wards that encompass the length and breadth, wall to wall of South Africa. How it will be rolled out, NEDLAC has said that it is untrue that 700 million is needed to roll out this national dialogue. But President Ramaphosa is hopeful that the eminent persons group that is currently going through this induction this weekend will be able to roll out the national dialogue throughout the course of the year. The president, through the deputy president, had said that they had originally envisaged that the national dialogue will take place between January and June, but the president is saying that because there will be elections at the local government level, they will take a break for about three to 4 months to allow political parties to go out and campaign and speak to South Africans. And then the national dialogue will then reconvene again to speak to communities on what needs to be done before that ultimate national convention that will take place. The issue is the modality and how they will be working in order to roll out the national dialogue to be all-inclusive to all South Africans in all walks of life: labor, business, civil society, urban, peri-urban, rural, peri-rural areas will have their input in making sure that they voice out their opinions in what takes place in the country and how you reshape South Africa going forward, particularly looking at the economic disparities that are there in South Africa, where a tiny 1% controls 95% of the South African economy, yet 99.9% of the African population are in destitute, poverty, underdevelopment, and unemployment, where you've got a middle class bulge that is currently not owning anything and is heavily debt riddled, and also coming up to finding solutions on how you rework the project South Africa going forward in order to avoid what is currently happening within the country of poverty, unemployment, underdevelopment, and an economy that is not currently working for all South Africans.
And lastly, any other standout moments during the uMkhonto wesizwe Liberation War Veterans Conference?
One of the standout moments was the address of former President Mbeki, particularly if you look at how the legacy foundations were and pulled out of the National Convention that took place at UNISA. Former President Mbeki today is saying that it's counter-revolution in the country that is working to make sure that the national dialogue does not take place, throwing his weight behind the national dialogue, saying that it must take place and it is South Africans who must shape their future, and that when South Africans are united and taking their destiny into their own hands, there is no counter-revolution that will ultimately defeat the country. So he is ultimately saying, former President Mbeki is riling up the South African ground and saying you need to take your country, you need to take it back from the big corporates, the big conglomerates that are currently controlling the country. You've seen how trade union movements within the country, COSATU, SAFTU, NATU, and other trade unions and federations within the country are a shadow of them former selves. You look at COSATU, they couldn't even fill up the Dobsonville Stadium. You look at how unions are failing to attract new members, particularly in a work environment and a shop floor that has changed, that is not like yesteryear when the NUM in the late 80s going to the late 80s through the 90s was the fastest growing union and arguably the biggest union in the world at that particular point in time. Remember that wildcat strike that was led by the NUM in the late 80s. Today, unions are a shadow of them former selves. NUMSA, NUM, SATU, FAU, NUMSA, and many other unions, SATU, they can no longer mobilize like they used to, meaning that there is a deunionization that is taking place within the country. There is a demobilization of politics that is taking place. Many South Africans are left destitute against politicians. Many people choose not to vote, particularly if you look at the last outcomes of the South African national elections, where many South Africans chose to go play soccer, to sit under a tree and not go and vote, and disengage and be engaged with their disengagement within politics.
Thank you so much, SABC Politics reporter Samkele Maseko.